This was Jesus' response after he got asked why his disciples didn't fast. And actually this goes way deeper than not fasting, so make sure to stick till the end of the video. I want to read Matthew 9 verse 14 till 17. Then John's disciples came and asked him, "How is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he's with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and they will fast. No one sees a patch of unstrung cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. Neither do people pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved." You guys have no idea how strong this verse actually is. I had to take a whole entire page of notes in order to understand this better. So we first gonna have to dive into verse 14, where he got asked by John's disciples why his disciples didn't fast. Why are John's disciples asking this? It wasn't even the teachers of law or the Pharisees, no, but it were John's disciples. So John's disciples always followed John. John at the time was in the prison, so John wasn't there. But John always pointed towards Jesus. But they always saw John fasting. But Jesus' his disciples didn't fast. So what's up with that? Let's see what Jesus' response was to that. Before that, I want to quickly talk about fasting because I think it's very important. Jesus did fast, but what was the difference in between Jesus and the Pharisees and the teachers of law? The teachers of law and the Pharisees fasted publicly, showing it off when they were fasting and making it clear to the public. When you're fasting, you should keep it privately and only for God, not for the people around you to show off what you're going through. I will definitely make a whole entire video on fasting because I think it's really important. But now let's dive into Jesus' response. He gives 3 responses to this, and all 3 with a different meaning. So we're first going to look at verse 15, which is the first response. He gives the example of the wedding. The Jewish wedding was different than the wedding we know today. Instead of just throwing a party, it was something that goes on through a whole entire week. So it was a whole entire week of joy. Now, it doesn't make sense to be sad during the wedding. People at the time would only fast when they were going through something difficult or when they were sad. And what does Jesus want to say with this? They're still with Jesus, and they mentioned that the time that the bridegroom will die is actually the time that they will fast, because that's the time to be sad. And Jesus said, as long as he is on this earth, there is no reason to fast, because there is no reason to be sad. You should be joyful about Jesus being on this earth. Now, when Jesus dies, that's the time that they will fast. And that's actually a time that's yet to come. But they didn't understand it at the time. So now we're going to dive into the second situation. In verse 16, Jesus talks about putting a seal of a new cloth on an old cloth, which doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? Break off a new part of clothing just to make an old one? What Jesus wants to say is it doesn't make sense to stick to an old part of clothing. When something is broken, you should just get a new one instead of trying to fix it with something that's new. And this verse actually only makes sense after reading the next one, where Jesus talks about putting new wine into an old wineskin. When you put new wine into an old wineskin, the wineskin will actually break and wine will leak out of it, which is obviously a waste of wine. Jesus actually talks here about the fulfillment of Judaism, which is he hanging on the cross. I'm talking about the before and talking about the after, saying that you should leave the old for the new. And you have to realize that if you combine old with new, it's going to become incompatible. You should leave the old behind, and then comes Jesus, and you should start something new. And Jesus wants actually to know that there are 3 parts in our life. The part before Jesus, the part where we meet Jesus, and the part after Jesus. We won't be the same after meeting Jesus, and we can't be the same. We should leave the old ourselves behind us and start a new life and a new identity in Christ. So that was it for today. See you guys tomorrow.